Hello everyone and welcome. It's the Black Shadow here and we're here for some late night Uprising design diary action. It is a little past 11 o'clock at night here and I've got somewhere I need to be tomorrow, but Paul Dennon in traditional fashion has decided to upload the next diary entry at about the most inopportune time he physically could have done for me while I'm still physically able to do it. So cheers for that. Anyways, a Diary 4 has come out, and as I had speculated, it is time to talk about contracts. Now, this is a completely brand new feature for Uprising. We've talked about it a little bit in a couple of the previous entries for this series. If you've not seen any of those, do feel free to go check them out. We've delved plenty into Uprising. But contracts is the attempt for the designers to enter a degree of modularity into Dune Imperium, especially into the early game as well. Something that has obviously become rather apparent with Dune Imperium as it is, especially with the expansions, is that it's usually of various sort of set paths at the start of the game of taking specific routes to get specific certain things, and that's just kind of what you do. And clearly, while obviously that's all well and good, it doesn't make for the most interesting sometimes. So this is an attempt to shake the make things a bit more interesting, give people different routes, and to not make it such an obvious scramble for the same first move every single game. So let's go have a look at this. We talked about spies last time, which obviously is definitely a big change up, but yeah, it is time for the Choam modules. Contracts was one of the first systems that was ever designed for Uprising. I want to push further into one of the central challenges that Dune Imperium asks its players. Which cards do you want to use, and which board spaces do you want to visit? Contracts very much tied to those core questions, allowing you to receive benefits for sending agents specific board spaces. So this is how it's going to work. There will be basically a stack of contracts. Think of it kind of similar to the tech system that's currently used for the Rise of Ix expansion. You're going to take them all, put them all face down into basically two piles, and you're going to turn the top face up. And what will happen is that whenever you trigger a contract icon on the board, which there's a couple dotted about, dutiful service for the Emperor, accept contract on the Choam shipping, whenever you take, I take one of these symbols, some intrigues will also have them, you will take one of those two contracts and take it to you. And that is your contract. And what you need to do is attempt to fulfill that contract. And when you do, you get a bonus reward. So a good example of that would be down here. Deliver supplies. When you complete a contract, you turn it face down and receive the printed reward. For most contracts, completion simply requires visiting your board space indicated. So for once we're taking deliver supplies here, the next time you visit that space, you'll gain free Solari in addition to anything else you gather at the space. Turn it face down because you only ever complete it once, which is obviously very notable. Some contracts will ask you to harvest a certain amount of spice. For these contracts, you must dispatch harvesters to, obviously to do some harvesting, and you've got to get so this is only for harvest, you've got to get at least 3 spice over the course of that, from to make a board space. So obviously that is very, very much important. However, then it starts getting interesting. A little over half of the contracts provide Solari rewards, and I think that is a very deliberate thing. I think that is an intention to kind of find a way past kind of a bit of the Swordmaster meta that currently exists. So people, will go double smuggle to share, or they'll go conspire, sort of thing. Giving extra options, giving extra routes for that. I think it's an attempt to shake that up. And obviously now knowing that the Swordmaster is 8 side for the first person and then less for other people. Also trying to encourage people to hit high counter more often to make use of the fact that you can go there more than once to get hold of various resources, that sort of thing. Definitely very, very notable. But there, of course, are rewards over the table, too. So you could go Arakeen for a troop and a spy. You could go to an Emperor's space and want to get a double card draw. That's pretty good, all things being honest. The thing is, it is interesting that you only get to use them once, though. And players will know what contracts you've got as well. So there's going to be, obviously, a bit of byplay of players maybe trying to block you from fulfilling certain contracts, and vice versa. So there could be some fun and games there. There are, as the game puts it, 2 oddball contracts in the game that don't ask you to visit board spaces, and these are very significant in their own separate ways. And that is this. Immediate. Gain 2 Solari. Looks pretty innocuous on the front. You think, it's just like with the Windfall intrigue. And yes, you're right, but in a world where we're in a significant, Swordmaster meta, people trying to rush it as fast as possible, that's pretty significant. You add that to, say, a set contract, for example, pull some cards, maybe do bits and pieces and whatever else. I mean, I think that could get chased after pretty heavily in the beginning of the game. I can definitely see that. The other one is very fascinating and is Pretty crazy as well. It's an acquire card here. When you next acquire, the spice must flow. The card that you get a victory point for 9 persuasion in your hand, you get a spice must flow. You can also get a spacing bump and free Solari, which is very interesting. It's the first time we've ever had a situation where collecting a Spice Must Flow card has any effect on stuff like influence or resources. Obviously, it's paid attention to stuff like Grand Conspiracy, Choem, Corner the Market, and sort of intrigues, victory points. But actually, tangible rewards on the board is something that I've never seen before. I have no idea how good this is going to be. But some crazy world where you steal a Spacing Alliance at the end of the game by buying a Spice Must Flow and winning because of that, I can barely process that, but it's a fascinating thought nonetheless. I don't think this is a really cool idea. Like, don't get me wrong, I think this is very important to longevity of this game. It's not a case of saying that Dune Imperium has become a solve game by any stretch of imagination. That's not true. But, like, the first couple of rounds, you see it obviously with competition games, you play loads of games, that sort of thing, it can get a little bit, you can kind of predict what's going to happen a little bit. So I think this is definitely a great attempt to try and adjust that. Now, the great thing with this contractor system, you don't actually have to run it. This is completely optional, as stated on further down here. It is not required at all. You can, and the developers do recommend playing a couple of no contracts games to get used to the rest of the mechanics in Uprising. And if you're not running the module, then simply whenever you go and get a symbol that is completing a contract or obtaining a contract, whatever else, you trigger the icon. You just gain 2 coins. So basically, it's turning accept contract, for example, into draw a card, gain 2 coins. You know. It's not too bad. It's better than a kick in the teeth. Duel for service is basically then just turned into wealth again, which again is not the worst thing in the world, but definitely very, very interesting. This a little bit more to talk about as well. This is pulled down, and here's my best thing about Contract is the replayability of the game. It's more difficult to stick to a favorite set of opening moves and 2 randomly selected contracts on the road. True. Tipping the scales on the payoff for different strategies. Some of those older contracts might provide a significant economic boost you want to pursue, but if you do, remember that competitive components can factor your goals and decision making. This is what there's a really hoping, is that the contract mechanic is going to have some significant differences in what people do in an attempt to stop people scoring these contracts. And some of them are pretty significant as well, you know, they could be pretty dangerous. One potential drawback of contracts is the risk for goal overload that new players can experience. I do think this can be a worry. I think it's something that kind of already affects people who are new to the Dune Imperium and are playing with all the expansion thing. Oh, well, I need to get victory points from combat. Oh, I need to hit the factions. Oh, but I need to go shipping. Oh, I've got to score spices flows. What about the Talactic? You know, and it really can get heavily scattered and kind of really struggling to get a tangible idea of what exactly it is you want to do. So that is, you know, I say, by themselves, contracts are not that complex, but Uprising brings 7 new things to Dune Imperium, and that has been much. So again, they suggest play a game or 2 without contracts to get used to everything that Uprising brings, between spies and makers and worms and the shield wolves and the new leaders and the new spaces, and there's a lot that's going to be changed. So I definitely think that's a good shout. Once you add the Choem module into the mix, you'll be able to shuffle in 4 additional Imperium cards, which obviously play a part in this. So, for example, a priority contract. You play it, get a contract. Not too bad. Interesting reveal here, by the way. 2 spice, or if you've completed 4 more contracts, you can trash it for a victory point. That is crazy strong. 2 spice, like, you definitely come across that. I think that's way too good, if you ask me. But the idea is you've got to have the contracts in the first place. Card Runner is really cool as well, actually. If you've completed 2 or more and then 4 more contracts, you can start using that to get hold of like more card draw, which I think is really cool. So there's a nice ability to like go heavy in that and try and snowball your game. I think it's pretty cool. They all marked with this little circle icon at the top. So that's pretty cool. Let's look at a couple of intrigues that are also affected as well. Backed by Choem, drop a influence for full Solari. That is that's really strong. I think that's pretty good. I think if you're willing to sack off like a bump early game to get hold of your Swordmaster, I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that could be really, really strong. Reach agreement's an interesting one as well. Retreat 1 or 2 of your troops to claim a contract. That's also pretty good, I'd argue, as well. Then gets in talking into the Rise of Ix, as some of you are aware of, but not everyone. The Rise of Ix and Immortality mods are available to be used alongside Uprising. I question whether I think that's actually a good idea or not, but it is something that can be. The compatibility is there. It doesn't necessarily mean you should do that, but it exists. Anyway. For players who integrate the Rise of Ix expansion of Uprising, there are an additional 10 special Rise of Ix contracts included in the game. The Rise of Ix board overlay comes up one of the contract spaces, which significantly changes how many contract players can do, i.e. Because of shipping existing, it means that basically shipping exists and it completely overrides this. This whole thing doesn't exist. So obviously if you're going to get hold of contracts, you'd have to go do it for service, and that's about it, which obviously is not ideal. So at the start of the game, Rise of Ix contracts are shuffled. Each player looks at 2 and chooses 1 to start the game with. What makes different about all of these starter contracts is the reward for completing them always includes taking another contract, so it plays back into the base mechanics. This allows the number of contracts able to be completed to be in the same ballpark of the Uprising game without Rise of Ix, because again, you've lost access to one of those spaces. So it's kind of a bit of a workaround. They do have a couple of interesting effects as well. So Highliner, for example, will give you a bit of extra money. Dreadnought, and instead of shipping, will give you a tech negotiator, which is better than a kick in the teeth, I guess. And then we get our own leaders, and one in particular, and that is the Padishah Emperor himself. Glorious leader of all Imperium. One of the leaders, one of 9 coming for this game, is Carino IV. And he requires the Tron module to work, because his mechanics work directly with that. When you play as the Emperor Shaddam, you alone have access to the 2 Sardaukar contracts in the game, because, of course, they are his trusted guard. They swear all fealty to the Emperor. They are his private army. So you see his ability, he gets to set aside both of them. Doesn't acquire them immediately, but they are both unique to him and him alone. He can take them whenever he wants. Which has the 2 interesting effects. First of all, of course, it means that he's the only person that can get hold of this. This Sardaukar contract, by the way, lets you take another action. That's huge. 2 cards are also pretty good. What it also does, it means that the pool of the other contracts does lessen ever so slightly. So if you're after 1 or 2 specifically of those, you know, you've got slightly better odds. So an interesting thing. Look at his ring as well, by the way. So if you, units can't be deployed to the conflict this turn. And you either get hold of a coin or a troop, or you can turn 3 coins into a wild bump. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Now you're allowed to stack contracts for the same board space. So if you get both of them, you can cash them all in at once. Okay, that's very important. I missed that. Shaddam's Signet Ring can be a mixed blessing. On the one hand, gain Solari and a troop is very potent effect early in the game, but when he plays a Signet Ring, cannot deploy to the conflict any troops to the conflict on that turn. So Shaddam has to make us choose its setup turns, and that's the idea. It's kind of like a bit of politics going on in the background. It's basically what's going on. That's what it's trying to replicate. Second option, oh gosh, voice went there, sorry. I've got to do this without editing because I ain't got much time. Second option, to pay Solari to gain influence on the Signet Ring can become a powerful political tool later in the game. Yeah, 3 coins for a wild bump. I mean, there's a reason the bribery intrigue is very highly regarded as very, very strong, and that's not far from it. Shaddam's abilities both tend to line up with the story of Dune. The Emperor was scheming in the background for quite some time, but Shaddam can really make him up in the late game if he can line things up properly, and I totally agree. Should be noted that pre-orders are now available worldwide for Uprising as well. You can go check those out. I think they're retailing about it's about $70, something like that. I haven't had a chance to check myself, but I know some folks have been looking around in Europe for that sort of thing. But they are available right now, and we have more diaries still to come. Oh yeah, we're not done yet. Including how Uprising works in solo mode, which is, fun enough, I don't play Dune Imperium at all on solo mode, but you'd be amazed the amount of questions I get about people who do play it in solo mode, asking me for how to make it work and that sort of thing. So that'd be good to do. So solo mode, 2 players, and of course the one thing we're very much curious about, that is the 3v3 6-player mode. which we still don't know very much about. I've speculated that I think you're going to have a different starting deck for the 3v3s, because obviously it's teams, and it'd be very interesting to see how that goes, and I suspect that will be the next thing that we'll be finding out, but very much so, that is Contracts for you, everyone. I like it. I think it's good. I think any degree of modularity in any kind of game is always good. It just helps to replayability. It helps to keep things fresh. It also allows for a lot of opportunism as well. And for those folks that kind of like to go outside the box and kind of think of funky moves, like myself, for example, and I will sometimes find these completely wild lines of routes to take, and sometimes they just work amazingly. Stuff like this really helps at that, and I think really helps to kind of, so you're not thinking, oh, I'm in second position, so I gotta go fold space to shit. It's trying to prevent that, to keep things fresh and to keep people thinking on their feet, which I think is one of the things that Dune Imperium, I think, should always try and encourage. Make people think on their feet, make them have to react. This is a game which rewards being very reactionary, able to adjust your strategy to what's going on, and taking advantage of situations when they come about. And I think this is a fantastic way to do that. Anyways, we're going to end this one here, so thank you all for watching and listening. Hope you enjoy. Take care of yourselves. I'm going to be away for a couple of days. I've got a bit of work to do, but we are now starting to get content up for the Dune Imperium Cup. The first game came out earlier yesterday, I think it was, or it might have been today, actually. And we've got another game in the works as well, coming out hopefully the next couple of days. And then beyond that, we've got a lot of matches, folks. We've got, I think, nearly 200 games being played in this competition in 7 weeks. We're going to be busy. Have a good one, everyone. Long live the fighters.